Today we are starting 10.3, which is the quadratic formula, and using the quadratic formula. So thus far, when we've dealt with any kind of squares, we've had a couple ways of solving. This one is factored, and so we use the zero product property. When I have one thing times another, and they equal 0, I set both equal to 0. So 2x plus 5 equals 0, and x minus 4 equals 0. Subtract 5 from both sides, 2x equals negative 5. Divide by 2, run out of room, and end up with x equals negative 5 over 2. On the other one, I just add 4 to both sides, so I have x equals 4. Quite frequently, when you have an x squared, you're going to have two answers. You may have only one answer. In some cases, you may have 0 answers, but most of the time, you're going to have two answers. On the next one, I don't have any x's. I only have an x squared, so I can just get that x squared alone and use the square root property. So if I subtract 8 from both sides of the equal sign, I'm left with 3x squared equals 75. Divide by 3 because I want to get that x squared alone. So I have x squared equals 25. I'm going to square root both sides. And I have x equals, and this is where you need to be careful, the square root of 25 is both positive 5 and negative 5, because remember the square root is finding the number that times itself gives you that number. So 5 times 5 gives you 25, but negative 5 times negative 5 also gives you a positive 25. So this is the sign plus or minus 5. And that's our answer on number 2. So those are our two answers for number 2. On number 3, all of this is being squared, so we square root to start. We're left with 2x plus 7 equals plus or minus 5, as described before. And we split that off into two equations. 2x plus 7 equals a positive 5. 2x plus 7 equals a negative 5. Then we solve both of them by subtracting 7. So 2x equals negative 2. 2x equals negative 12. Run out of room, divide by 2. So I have x equals negative 1 and x equals negative 6. Those are my two answers on that one. So that was what I was referring to having two answers. When we deal with the quadratic formula, what we did in chapter 7 was factoring these quadratics. So if I look at something like this, I would factor it and solve it using the zero product property. Not all quadratics are factorable like that, so they don't all have a whole number of outcomes. So what we do instead is use what's called the quadratic formula, and this is used to solve for x when a quadratic equals 0. These a, b, and c's in here refer to the numbers in front of your x squared. That's a. So right here, the number before your x squared is a, the number before x is b, and the number by itself is c. Make sure you're watching for negatives in there. If it's minus a bx, then you need to make sure to keep that negative with it. So then it's all about plugging things in. So first what I want to do on the class example number 1 is figure out what my a, b, and c are. If I just have an x squared, then a is 1. Remember, that's that implied 1 there. B is 5, and c is 6. That equals 0 is only because this is what we're solving. One doesn't over here. Imply that on there equals 0. Anyway, the class example 1. So if I look at my quadratic formula from above, it's x equals, and I'm writing it slightly, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2a. What I'm going to do is erase the b's, and I'm going to put in 5. I'm going to put this in parentheses Not because we need them this time, but because later on we might. I'm going to erase my A, and I'm going to put in number 1 in parentheses, and then C, which is 6. So now I just need to simplify, and this is where different teachers vary on things. I like to see on your own without the calculator to start. So -5 plus or minus the square root. 5 squared is 25. Minus all divided by 2. So x equals -5 plus or minus the square root of 1 divided by 2. X equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 1. Yeah, that's where you actually want to take the square root, is 1. Because 1 times 1 is 1. And divided by 2. Now at this point, I'm as simplified as I can get. I need to split it off to that plus or minus, kind of like I did on number 3 on the warm-up. So I'm going to do plus, and I'm going to do minus. So this equals -4 divided by 2, which equals -2. So that's one of my answers. This is -6, which equals -3. That is my other answer. I'm done. Second one is very similar. I'm not going to do the whole problem with you. And watching out for those negatives. Actually, I'll plug in with you and square root b squared is 4 times c, all divided by 2a. The reason I'm writing it out like this is because negatives are a particular issue for people. So when I erase the b's and I put in -3, then I have a double negative here. That's why I want to be really careful with the negatives. A, again, is 1. And then C is -10. So I've got x equals a double -3 is a +3. Scoot that up a little bit. So 3 plus or minus the square root. -3 squared is a +9. Be careful how you put that in your calculator, because if you don't have the parentheses, it'll tell you it's a -9, and then your numbers will be all kind of screwed up. Over here, -4 times 1 is -4, times -10 is a +40, so plus 40, all divided by 2. This is 3 plus or minus the square root of 49, all divided by 2. Square root of 49 is 7, so plus or minus 7. And that plus or minus that we were talking about in number 2 and number 3 is built into the formula. So you don't have to worry about when you take the square root of 49 being plus or minus 7. That's what that is. That's why it's there. So plus, minus, so 3 plus 7 divided by 2 is 10 over 2, which equals 5. That's one of my answers. 3 minus 7 over 2 equals -4 over 2, which equals -2. Turn your paper over. And I'm going to do one more with you, and then I'm going to leave you to it. On this one, on number 3, you want to watch out because my A is not 1 anymore. A is 6 because that's the number in front of x squared. B is -5. And C is -6. So I'm going to plug everything in. Once again, I'm going to write it out. I'm just going to keep doing that for a while until I really get the hang of it. So b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Take out the b's and put in that -5. take out the a's, and put in 6. And take out c and put in -6. Alright, double -5 gives me a +5, plus or minus the square root, 25. And then I'm going to use my calculator for this one. -4 times 6 times -6 is 144. It's plus 144 divided by 12. So 144 plus 25 is 169. And then the square root of 169 is 13. So I'm jumping a few steps here because I'm out of space. So 5 plus or minus 13, all divided by 12. I can split it off into my plus and my minus. 5 plus 13 divided by 12 is 18 over 12, which is not a whole number, but that reduces to either 1.5 or 3 over 2, because those are both divisible by 6, not 3 over 6, sorry, 3 over 2. The other one is 5 minus 13 divided by 12 is -8 over 12, which reduces to, those are both divisible by 4, so -2 over 3. I'm going to leave that one as a fraction for sure. So that is the quadratic formula. We get some good practice on that. And then the second part, this mixed practice, that takes into account factoring, quadratic formula, and square root property. So enjoy and have a lovely day.